Today, we're covering one of the most ambitious and beautifully written novels in recent years, The Covenant of Water by Abraham Verghese. This novel is an epic, multi-generational family saga that takes place in Kerala, India, spanning nearly 8 decades from 1900 to the 1970s. The story begins in Kerala, India, in the early 1900s, a land defined by its lush backwaters, endless canals, and monsoon-fed rivers. Water is both a source of life and a harbinger of death. Among the many families who live along these waterways is a young Syrian Christian girl whose life is about to change forever. She does not yet have a name that carries weight. She is simply a daughter, a sister, a child, but soon she will be known as Bigamachi, the matriarch of Parambil. But before she can become a woman of strength, she must first survive the journey into the unknown. She is only 12 years old when her fate is sealed. One morning, she hears her mother whispering to a neighbor, a conversation that sends a chill down her spine. The marriage has been arranged. The groom is a widower, wealthy, a landowner. He needs a new wife. She does not fully understand what it means to be married. All she knows is that her world, the world of childhood games, laughter, and simple joys, is about to disappear. She watches as her mother scrubs her skin with turmeric, preparing her for the ceremonies. She watches as her father negotiates dowries, speaking of her as though she were a possession, a duty, a responsibility to be handed off. Her heart pounds. She wants to scream, to say, "I am too young. I don't want this." But she knows the truth. Her wants do not matter in her world. A daughter's destiny is not her own to shape. On the day of her wedding, she is dressed in gold and silk, her small body weighed down by heavy jewelry. The air is thick with incense and the scent of jasmine flowers. Priests chant ancient prayers in Syriac, a language she barely understands. Her groom, Bigapachin, stands beside her, a towering figure, a man of 40. His expression is unreadable, his presence overwhelming. She feels like a doll being moved from one set of hands to another when they tie the minu, the sacred wedding pendant, around her neck. She does not feel joy or excitement. She feels a sinking weight in her chest. This is not a celebration. This is the beginning of a life she did not choose. After the wedding, she must leave her family behind. As she steps onto the wooden boat that will carry her to Parambil, her mother clutches her hands tightly, tears streaming down her face. "Be a good wife, respect your husband, bear him sons." These are her mother's final words to her. She watches as her home shrinks in the distance, the familiar faces of her siblings and neighbors fading away, swallowed by the vast expanse of Kerala's backwaters. For the first time in her life, she is completely alone. The boat glides silently through the water. The only sounds the rhythmic dip of the oars and the distant call of a kingfisher diving into the river. As the sun sets, the backwaters become a place of shadow and mystery. The water reflects the sky, turning it into a mirror of endless darkness. She shivers. The boatman does not speak. Bigapachin does not speak. She can feel the weight of his presence beside her, his broad shoulders stiff, his face hidden in the growing dusk. She clutches her wedding pendant, silently praying to God for what she does not know. When they finally arrive at Parambil, her new home, she is struck by its grandeur and isolation. The estate is massive, surrounded by rice fields, thick groves of banana trees, and canals that twist like veins through the land. The mansion itself is ancient, its wooden beams dark with age, its corridors echoing with silence. Inside, servants bow their heads as they lead her to her new room. The bed is too big, the walls are too tall. The house does not feel warm or welcoming. It feels like a cage. The first days at Parambil are terrifyingly quiet. Bigapachin does not treat her unkindly, but he does not treat her like a wife either. He is distant, his face unreadable, his routine unshakable. In the mornings, he disappears into the fields, managing the workers. In the evenings, he sits in his study, reading old books and records. He does not ask about her. He does not talk to her beyond a few words of instruction. At night, she lies awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the estate, the whisper of the wind through the palm trees, the occasional splash of fish in the canal, the distant hum of temple bells from the village. She feels invisible. She wonders, is this marriage? Is this all there is? It is only after a few weeks that she begins to notice the whispers among the servants. They do not meet her eyes when they speak of the river. Then, one evening, a tragedy strikes. A young boy from the estate drowns, his body pulled lifeless from the water. She watches as the workers bow their heads in silent mourning, their faces lined with fear, not just sorrow. She turns to one of the older maids and asks, "Why does this happen?" The woman hesitates, then murmurs, she does not understand. Not yet, but as she watches Big Apache clench his jaw, his hands trembling, she realizes this is not the first time this has happened, and it will not be the last. The death changes something in her. She begins to see Parambil not just as a house, but as a place shaped by fate, a place where water gives and takes, where men fear their own reflections, where silence is a shield against grief. She is no longer a child. She is Bigamachi now, the mistress of a house haunted by a curse she does not yet understand. And deep in her heart, a new fear begins to grow, a fear that one day, the river will take something from her too, and she will be powerless to stop it. The days at Parambil slowly turn into months, and the young bride begins to understand the rhythms of her new life. She wakes before sunrise, performing her morning prayers in the small chapel attached to the house, a tradition long upheld by the women before her. The estate's workers already know their tasks, for the day some tending to the paddy fields, others preparing the boats for trade. She is expected to oversee them, a responsibility she never asked for but must now embrace. Big Apache remains distant, his presence looming but silent. He does not mistreat her, nor does he offer comfort. At night, he disappears into his study, poring over ledgers and old maps of the land, his brows furrowed in deep thought. She wonders if this is what marriage is meant to be, to strangers bound together by a fate neither of them chose. But she does not complain. Complaining is not something women do here. One evening, she finds herself standing at the edge of the backwaters, staring at the still, dark waters that have swallowed so many before. The air is thick with the scent of wet earth and distant rain. The servants avoid the water at night, muttering prayers as they hurry past. She remembers the old maid's words, "The water always takes the men of Parambil." She has yet to understand the full weight of these words, but a deep unease settles in her chest. Months pass, and she begins to take charge of the household in small ways. She learns the names of the workers, understands which fields yield the best rice, memorizes the market prices for fish and spices. The servants, at first wary, begin to trust her. They see that she is not just a child bride playing at being a mistress. She is learning, adapting, growing. She discovers a hidden strength within herself, a quiet determination that keeps her moving forward. Then the first tragedy strikes. One morning, Big Apache does not come down for breakfast. A servant rushes into the house, breathless, eyes wide with fear. He had gone to the backwaters alone before dawn, as he often did, but this time, he had not returned. Panic spreads through the estate. The workers grab lanterns and poles, rushing to the river's edge. And then, just as the sun begins to rise, they find him. His body floats lifeless, caught in the tangled roots of a banyan tree. The household is thrown into mourning. She watches as the women wail, as the men lower his body into the earth, as priests recite ancient prayers over him. But she does not cry. She stands still, her face unreadable, her mind racing. He is gone, and yet she barely knew him. A husband in name, a stranger in life, and now she is alone. But she does not have time to grieve. With Big Apache's death, the weight of Parambil falls on her shoulders. She is only 14, but the estate, the workers, the land, and the curse of the water are now hers to manage. The elders in the village expect her to return to her family, to remarry, to relinquish control. But she refuses. She will not be sent away like a discarded object. This land is hers now, and she will fight to keep it. She steps into her role with quiet resolve. She ensures the fields are tended, the debts are paid, the workers are cared for. She listens to their concerns, something Big Apache never did, and in return, they give her their loyalty. Slowly, the estate stabilizes. She grows into her title Big Amachi, the matriarch of Parambil. But even as she strengthens her grip on her new life, the shadow of the family curse lingers. More deaths follow. Young men, healthy and strong, are pulled into the depths of the backwaters, their bodies found days later, bloated and lifeless. Some drown mysteriously in their sleep, as if the water had called them from their very dreams. The village whispers that the curse will never be broken, and then one day, she learns she is pregnant. A mix of fear and hope swirls within her. She prays for a daughter, a child who will not be claimed by the water. But when the time comes, she gives birth to a son, a beautiful boy with bright eyes and strong limbs. She holds him close, whispering silent promises to protect him, to keep him safe from the fate that took his father. But deep in her heart, a question lingers: can anyone escape the covenant of water? This is only the beginning of Big Amachi's story. The battles she must fight are far from over. In the next part, we will see how she raises her son under the weight of the family's curse, how she navigates the changing tides of history, and how the past and present intertwine in ways she never could have imagined. Big Amachi's world shifts the moment her son is born. He is a fragile thing, wrapped in soft linen, his tiny fingers curling around hers as if he already knows she is his protector. The midwives murmur blessings over him. The servants bring sweets to celebrate. But behind their smiles, there is fear. A son means the family name will continue, but it also means the curse still has a claim on them. She names him Jojo, a simple name, easy to say, full of warmth. She watches him grow, his laughter echoing through the halls of Parambil. He is fearless, drawn to the water like all the men before him. Whenever he gets the chance, he sneaks down to the river bank, his feet sinking into the cool mud, his eyes wide with wonder. She warns him, begs him to stay away, but water calls to him in ways she cannot understand. Years pass and Jojo becomes everything she hoped for: strong, intelligent, kind. He learns quickly, his hand steady as he helps with the estate. His bond with Big Amachi is unshakable. He listens to her stories, watches her manage the land, understands the weight she carries. But as he grows, so does her fear. He is a man of Parambil, and the water always takes the men of Parambil. One day, a visitor arrives, a Scottish doctor named Digby Kilger. He is unlike anyone they have seen before, tall, pale-skinned, with sharp blue eyes that seem to take in everything. He has come to study diseases in Kerala, but what he finds in Parambil captures his curiosity even more. He hears the whispers about the curse, about the men who drowned in their sleep, about the strange, inexplicable pull of the backwaters. Jojo, fascinated by the foreigner, follows him around, watching as he treats the sick. Asking endless questions about the world beyond Kerala, Dr. Kilger sees potential in the boy, sees a mind eager to learn, and offers to teach him. Big Amachi hesitates, torn between pride and fear. She wants Jojo to have opportunities beyond Parambil, but she knows that knowledge brings distance. If he learns too much, will he still belong to this land, to this family, to her? But Jojo is determined. He studies late into the night, his hands stained with ink, his mind filled with dreams of something bigger. He wants to be a doctor like Dr. Kilger, wants to understand the curse, wants to find a way to break it. Big Amachi watches him, torn between admiration and dread. She has fought so hard to keep him safe, but now she wonders if she has only prepared him to leave. Then tragedy strikes again. One morning, a young worker is found floating face down in the backwaters. Another life taken, another funeral, another reminder that the curse is still alive. Jojo watches in silence, his fists clenched, his heart heavy. He refuses to accept it as fate, refuses to believe that the water has power over them. He turns to Dr. Kilger, begging him to help find a scientific explanation. The doctor listens, intrigued. He has seen cases of epilepsy, seizures, unexplained drowning deaths. Could it be something medical rather than mystical? The idea shakes the foundations of everything Parambil believes in. If the curse is not real, then what does that mean for the generations who have lived in fear? What does it mean for Big Amachi, who has built her life around protecting her son from something that might not even exist? As Jojo grows older, his ambitions clash with the traditions of Parambil. He dreams of leaving, of studying medicine, of understanding the mysteries of the human body. But Bigamachi fears that in chasing answers, he will put himself in more danger. The further he goes, the closer he might get to the truth of the curse, and she is not sure she wants him to find it. But fate does not wait. It never does. Jojo's story is just beginning, and the next part will reveal the choices he must make, the loves and losses that shape him, and the inescapable force that binds him to the covenant of water. Jojo's desire to study medicine takes him far from Parambil. He earns a scholarship and moves to Madras to attend medical school. A world so different from the one he grew up in. The bustling city, the rigorous studies, and the exposure to modern science challenge everything he has known. He is captivated by the idea that medicine can explain what his family has always attributed to fate or divine intervention. But even as he thrives academically, he feels the pull of home, the weight of his family's past, and the mystery of the so-called curse still lingering in his mind. Meanwhile, Bigamachi remains in Parambil, watching as her son drifts further away. She is proud of Jojo, but her fear never fades. She worries that his pursuit of knowledge will come at a cost. Her past has taught her that joy is often followed by sorrow, and she cannot shake the feeling that something is waiting just beyond the horizon. In Madras, Jojo meets a fellow student, a brilliant and ambitious young woman named Elsie. Unlike Jojo, she does not come from wealth or privilege, but she has fought for her place in the world of medicine. Their bond grows through long nights of study, shared dreams, and a mutual understanding of what it means to defy expectations. But Jojo is haunted by the past. He does not tell Elsie about the family curse, afraid that speaking it aloud will make it real. Back in Parambil, tragedy strikes. One of the younger family members, a distant cousin, drowns in what seems to be another inexplicable accident. The villagers whisper about the curse, but Bigamachi feels something deeper, something more terrifying. What if the curse is not supernatural, but something in their very blood? Something passed down through generations? She begins to question everything she once believed. Jojo is shaken by the news. He returns home for the funeral and finds Parambil unchanged yet different. The place that once felt suffocating now feels strangely distant. He cannot ignore the pattern any longer. If this so-called curse is truly medical, then it must have a cause, a name, and a possible cure. His return is not just about loss, it is also about duty. He sees the suffering of the villagers, the lack of medical care, and the way disease and misfortune are accepted as fate. With his newfound knowledge, he begins to treat the sick, becoming a bridge between old beliefs and modern medicine. But his presence also stirs conflict. Some see him as a savior, while others view him as a man who meddles in things better left alone. As Jojo's medical career progresses, so does his personal life. His relationship with Elsie deepens, and they make plans for the future. But fate, as always, has other ideas. A sudden illness sweeps through Madras, and Elsie falls gravely ill. Jojo fights to save her, using every bit of his knowledge and training. But in the end, he is powerless against the force of nature. Elsie's death shatters him, leaving him questioning everything he believed about medicine, fate, and the supposed power of human will. Grief drives him back to Parambil, where he throws himself into work, treating the villagers, investigating the drownings, and slowly piecing together the truth about his family's history. He begins to suspect that the curse is a genetic disorder, something hereditary that manifests through seizures and an increased risk of drowning. But proving it is another matter entirely. Bigamachi watches her son with a mixture of pride and fear. He is closer than ever to the truth, but she knows that knowledge does not always bring peace. Sometimes it only brings more pain. She has seen too much, lost too much, and she wonders if perhaps some mysteries are better left unsolved. As Jojo inches closer to unraveling the mystery, another tragedy strikes. One of his young patients, a boy he had grown particularly close to, drowns despite all precautions. The loss is devastating, and Jojo begins to doubt himself. For all his training, all his understanding of medicine, he still cannot prevent what seems inevitable. But giving up is not in his nature. With each new loss, he becomes more determined to uncover the truth, to break the cycle that has haunted his family for generations. What he does not yet realize is that the answers he seeks may come at a price, one that he may not be ready to pay. Jojo refuses to let despair consume him. He dedicates himself to his work, poring over medical texts, consulting with experts, and carefully documenting every case of unexplained drowning or seizure he encounters. He becomes obsessed with understanding the pattern, believing that if he can name the disease, he can fight it. But his growing reputation as a doctor in Parambil is met with resistance. The villagers respect him, but they also fear what he represents. To them, illness and fate are intertwined, and Jojo's insistence on science feels like an affront to their beliefs. Meanwhile, Big Amachi's health begins to decline. The years of hardship, loss, and endless worrying have taken their toll. She watches her son struggle against forces she has long since accepted, but she also sees his strength, his determination, and his refusal to let the past define the future. For the first time, she begins to hope that maybe, just maybe, Jojo will succeed where others have failed. As Jojo's research deepens, he stumbles upon an old medical case from decades ago. A British doctor stationed in India had documented a rare genetic disorder with symptoms eerily similar to what Jojo's family experiences, a disorder that affects the nervous system, leading to sudden seizures, loss of control, and an increased risk of drowning. The pieces begin to fall into place. This is not a curse, it is a medical condition, one that has unknowingly shaped the fate of his family for generations. The revelation is both exhilarating and terrifying. If this is a genetic disorder, it means the affliction has a name, but it also means that there is no supernatural force to fight. Only science. The weight of responsibility settles heavily on Jojo. Now that he knows the truth, he must decide what to do with it. Just as he begins to formulate a plan to test and treat those at risk, another tragedy strikes. Big Amachi, his anchor, his guide, suffers a fatal stroke. Her passing is a profound loss. Shaking Jojo to his core, with her gone, he feels more alone than ever. But he also realizes that her death marks the end of an era, the old ways, the fear of the unknown, the unquestioning acceptance of fate. They no longer have a hold on him. After Big Amachi's funeral, Jojo returns to his work with renewed purpose. He seeks out specialists, writes letters to medical institutions, and starts a project to educate the next generation of doctors in India. His goal is clear. He wants to ensure that no more lives are lost to ignorance, that no more families are torn apart by the so-called curse. Years pass and Jojo's efforts begin to bear fruit. His research gains recognition and a medical journal publishes his findings. He identifies the disorder as a hereditary condition linked to epilepsy. And while there is no cure, there are ways to manage it. His work saves lives, but it also brings difficult decisions. Those carrying the gene must decide whether to have children, knowing they might pass it on. The weight of knowledge is heavy, but Jojo believes it is better than living in fear. In the final stretch of his journey, Jojo finds love again. This time, it is not a whirlwind romance, but a quiet, steady companionship, a fellow doctor, someone who understands his mission, his pain, and his unrelenting drive. Together, they build a future rooted in science and hope. As Jojo nears the end of his life, he returns to Parambil one last time. The house stands as it always has, weathered by time but unbroken. He walks through the familiar halls, remembering those who came before him, the struggles they endured, the sacrifices they made. And as he stands by the water, the very element that once symbolized fear and death, he feels something else entirely: peace. The covenant of water was never about curses or punishment. It was about survival, adaptation, and the unbreakable bond between past and future. Jojo has honored that covenant in the best way he knows how, by breaking the cycle, by turning fear into knowledge, and by ensuring that the next generation will not be bound by the same fate. His journey has been long, filled with sorrow and triumph. But in the end, it has been worth it. The legacy of Parambil is no longer one of tragedy. It is one of resilience, of progress, of hope. And as Jojo takes his final breath, he knows that his work, his life, has meant something. The water, once a source of loss, now reflects only the endless sky above, a symbol of freedom, of new beginnings, and of a story that will continue long after he is gone. Jojo's passing marks the end of an era, but his legacy is far from over. His work has changed lives. His research has paved the way for future discoveries. And the fear that once gripped his family has been replaced with understanding. His children and students carry forward his mission, spreading awareness and ensuring that the next generation will not suffer in silence. The Parambil estate, once filled with whispers of curses and tragedies, becomes a place of healing. It stands as a testament to resilience, a bridge between the past and the future. The waters that once symbolized death now carry a different meaning. They are a source of life, sustenance, and connection. As time moves forward, Jojo's descendants continue to visit the estate. Some choose to stay, while others travel the world, but they all carry with them the knowledge of where they come from. They tell the stories of Bigamachi, of Jojo, of the generations that fought to survive, and in doing so, they keep the covenant of water alive, not as a burden, but as a tribute to the strength of their ancestors. In the final moments of the story, the narration shifts to a quiet, reflective tone. The water remains unchanged and eternal. It has witnessed generations rise and fall. It has held the sorrow of those who feared it, and now it holds something new: hope. The cycle has been broken, not by force, but by knowledge, by love, by the unwavering belief that the future can be different. As the sun sets over Parambil, casting golden light over the rippling surface of the water, there is a sense of closure. The story that began with fear ends with peace. The covenant of water is no longer a curse, it is a promise. A reminder that even in the face of suffering, there is always a path forward, and that the human spirit, like the water itself, will always find a way to endure.